Welcome to the Learn to Business podcast. Thanks for joining us today. We're just a couple of days away from the 12th of April when part of the economy reopens. And Harry, what are you most looking forward to on the 12th of April?
I think if you've decided to watch the video rather than just listen to the podcast, I think that'll be very obvious that haircuts are more than needed at this point on both of our parks. It's been 3.5 months and this week is getting out of control. So I am hyped for a lovely fade. I mean, I've even forgotten what that feels and looks like. It's just getting called a boffhead every day is getting quite old. So definitely that, and maybe a sneaky beer garden or two. What about you, Lee?
I think that's exactly the same snap, actually. The density of my sideburns is getting beyond the joke, and but I'm getting my lawn scarified and aerated. For anybody who's a homeowner out there and likes a bit of gardening themselves, I feel like they should need to scarify my head at the moment because it's just out of control. And obviously the gym's reopening as well, which we obviously I got caned on last time I mentioned the gym, so I'll keep that brief.
Yeah, we don't want to hear about any more breakfasts this time.
So today we are going to welcome Jenny Cooper Timesaver. She's a virtual assistant, and we've had a couple of questions from the audience in the past around, can we have a topic around virtual assistants, because we don't really know much about them. We want to use them, we don't know how to get one, and we don't know what they can do, etc. So we're hoping that this podcast will answer all of those questions. Enjoy. Hi, Jenny. A big warm welcome to the Learn to Business podcast. Thank you for joining us today. How are you getting on?
Having a really good week, thank you. All going well, and it's lovely to meet you in person as such.
Absolutely, yeah, and likewise. Again, thanks for joining us today. I think we had quite a few requests about virtual assistants, from small business owners. What are they, how are they used, and can I use one, all that kind of good stuff. So we thought, rather than us trying to cobble together an answer which probably is in nowhere near along the truth, we thought, let's get our very own virtual assistant on, and then you can answer things based on your experience. So I guess first and foremost, it'd be great to know a little bit more about you and your business and how you came to set that up.
So my background is retail. So I spent 18 years working for a major bookseller, which I loved, but eventually outgrew. And then I also had a similar thing, which I think is why a lot of people come to being a virtual assistant, of managing childcare and trying to find something flexible, wanting to have their own business that they could build. So my route was slightly roundabout in that I got involved with my children's school and helped the PTA a lot. And I knew I wanted to leave retail, but I had no idea what to do. And then being on the PTA, I found that what I thought was normal, other people are like, you're mega organized, you're really good at putting things together. And it was through that I fell into an administrative job that came up in the same village, which was running the village hall. And I thought, well, I'll do that for a few years and then I'll look for clients. But basically everything has happened a lot faster than I planned. So while I was doing the village hall, I met people through that who were like, you're really organized, can you help me with my business? And it's just snowballed since then. So I left my job in beginning of 2019. I started taking on more clients at the end of 2019, and I only actually advertised that I was a virtual assistant and what I did at the beginning of 2020. Even then it was quite a quiet start, and obviously COVID and lockdown, and I was ill with COVID. So the business has only really been heavily promoted and pushed since May last year, and it has grown astronomically. And what's happened is I've just been in the right place at the right time. So obviously I got out of retail at a good time, not the time to be working in a brick and mortar high street. But also I've sort of what we do as virtual assistants is it's providing support to small business owners, but particularly in the digital space. So most of what I do is online, and obviously given the last year, everyone wants help with their presence online. So that's why I've come in.
Oh, absolutely fantastic. And I think if we just take a step back slowly, so I guess in your words, it'd be great to, what is a virtual assistant and what do they do? I think that would be a great intro for a lot of the people listening.
So I'm going to talk actually about basically the virtual assistant. We're freelance, so we're not an employee. So that is quite exciting for you as a business owner, because it is not that commitment of taking someone onto your payroll and everything that comes with managing that with HR, with providing benefits, and also if you decide that that partnership's not working, to get rid of them. So a virtual assistant is, we are freelance. So that means that we work together in an equal partnership, and we provide you a service that you then pay for. For business owners, a virtual assistant is basically that extra pair of hands. So it's when you run out of all those hats that you have to wear, particularly if you're a solo entrepreneur, of, you know, doing your marketing and your admin and your bookkeeping and this, that, and the other. Virtual assistant can step in and take a lot of those tasks off your hands.
Yeah, no, that's perfect. Yeah. And I guess, not to take this the wrong way, but I guess in my mind, and certainly whenever I've spoken to people about VAs in the past, they've always talked about, you know, somebody in Southeast Asia, for example. And actually, when we came across your profile, we thought, actually, we've never really seen UK-based VAs that often. And I guess, how common are UK-based VAs? And I guess, what advantages do you have over others?
So it's quite interesting, because I think you mentioned in the questions you sent me about the 4-hour work week. So obviously as VAs, we love Tim Ferriss, because basically his entire book is hire a VA and then your life will be brilliant. So it's like the best free advertising. So yeah, I guess the traditional is, obviously there are international VAs that you can do who do a very good job. If you are looking for spending as little as possible, that is the way to go. If you have a UK-based virtual assistant, you'll be paying more. But I guess it's more about how you want to run your business. There's a vast amount of us in the UK, and I think more and more are setting up at the moment. Obviously, if you're spending with UKVA, I think there's just a bit more trust and understanding of culture, language, communications, just little things like, you know, how UK systems work, tax and all that you don't have to communicate. Yeah. And also, I think it's about that you're spending money that's going to go back into the economy. So quite a lot of my clients are quite local. So obviously they're supporting me as a local business. I'm supporting them as a local business, and it all just feeds back into the same place. So it's probably just about how you want to set up. Do you want a kind of closer relationship with someone in this country who kind of gets it, but then you'll be paying a bit more? Or is it more a priority if you don't really mind who does it, as long as it's done and actually you can outsource abroad?
I think that's fair comments, isn't it? You're obviously gonna have a different relationship with someone who's UK based, living in the same place as you, on the same time zone. I think is probably an important thing when you want someone who's online when you're online, can answer things quickly, because otherwise you can have, I guess there's the benefit of there's someone working almost overnight and getting things done for you. But then if you want something immediate, you're not going to get that from someone who's based overseas. When do you think, because from the conversations we've had with small business owners, people most of the time they get into this thing where they want to do everything themselves, and they find it very difficult to relinquish control of even the most menial of tasks. So how do you get small businesses over that line and feeling confident enough that they can hand over this part of the business to someone else?
I think that's a big advantage of a UK-based VA. I think it feels less scary. Obviously, you're much more likely to be able to get word of mouth as well. I think a lot of VAs, we get our work from, once we've helped one person, they will rave about us, tell everyone else, and that's how you build up your business. I think generally with most business owners, my clients, either they've had a VA before and they love it, so they totally understand it, or you kind of, I guess there is a bit of education, but it's normally about the emotions. So it's normally about the stress and overwhelm in their business. And I guess it's that when you want to really level up your business and step up, at some point you have to relinquish things. And so I think for VAs, often we can take off kind of those lower level tasks. So at the moment, for a lot of my clients, it's social media. If they know they need a social media presence, they don't want, they're not planning to be influencers, but they need a consistent thing going out. And that just takes up too much headspace, because it's like it's never ending, isn't it? It's a Sisyphean task. You always need more social media. So they found if they can give that to me, know that I will do my best for their business and ensure they've got that presence, that's kind of taken from their head, and they can focus on the higher level stuff. So for instance, I've got quite a few clients at the moment who are kind of artists and makers, and they've got successful to a certain level, but they're kind of stuck making the same type of products because they're doing all the other bits of the business, managing the orders, social media and so on. Whereas because they've now got a bit off me, they're then carving out that time again to be creative and come up with their new range. I think it's the same as well of just, how do you want to spend your time? What's your zone of genius? So are you better spent that, you're doing the high level, the high earning fee work, and actually spend a little bit, but it gets all those smaller admin tasks off your plate, so you're not trying to hold them in your head.
Yeah, I think that makes absolute sense, actually. And the way I was thinking about it before we joined this podcast is that actually, whether you want, let's say, a few VAs working for you, but certainly if you're thinking about hiring somebody initially, and you're not very good at relinquishing control, then it gives you that means of practicing delegation and effective delegation, because no doubt, you've experienced it and we've experienced it at work as well. When you ask somebody to do something and then what you get back isn't quite what you were looking for. And it's like, well, I didn't really explain that properly. So I think it feels like a really good way for somebody to refine those delegation skills and a softer way to relinquish that control.
And I think that's one of the advantages of actually using a VA rather than an employee, because it takes the burden off you so much. Because I think it feels like it's all on you as the employer if I didn't do a good job. Because if you're working with a VA, they should be helping you and advising you of how to delegate. So they'll either have the system or they'll try and work with you and understand. So I normally find when you start with a new client, they'll have a little idea, and you build up over the months. People normally increase their hours, because once they realize what you can do and they've kind of seen that level of quality across a certain part of their business, either I can say, well, actually, I could do that as well if you wanted me to, or they can see things that they can then pass on.
I think that's a real benefit, and I think it's really helpful as well that you're working with loads of different businesses. You're seeing what a lot of different businesses are doing, what's working well for them, what's an efficient way of spending time, an efficient way of delegating certain tasks. So therefore, it's another head in the game, isn't it? And we talked about it when we had our podcast about how to choose an accountant. It's making sure that it doesn't feel like you're running your business just in a silo, all your own thoughts, never challenged, no new ideas being brought in. And it's someone who challenges you and says, well, you could do things a little bit differently. I think that's of a big help for sure in my mind, just another head in there.
That's kind of the main reaction I get. I mean, most of my clients are female, but they say it's actually the emotional support. I mean, I had one client who basically nearly broke down in tears because she's like, I'm not alone in my business anymore. There's someone else who's coming in with fresh eyes and I know is supporting me and cheering me on. Yeah, I think that's it. It's so hard, obviously, particularly over the last year. It's been so isolating. So I think just having a fresh pair of eyes, and also just that I've got that wider knowledge of, different systems, different ways of doing things, that I can then lay it out for a client that these are your options. And it saves them having to spend however much time it would have been researching all that themselves, that they can leapfrog all that, and then I can help them with it and then potentially implement it and do it all for them. So that's why I'm called Jennifer Cooper Timesaver. There's a huge amount of just time saving that we do.
Yeah, I think it's that double-edged sword, isn't it? Of people want to do everything themselves because they've always done it themselves. There's a certain way that they want it done, and they know they can kind of trust that something's not going to go wrong. But I think it's that important point that you made around it stops. Almost get these routine tasks that you have to do. The bigger your business gets, the more time that they take. And there's going to come to a certain point when you're spending most of your time doing that, probably adding no real value. And the kind of the thing that made your business successful to begin with is probably going to start suffering as a result of that. And I think that's one of the reasons as well that we're doing what we're doing, isn't it, Lee? Because along with that, there's the financial side of business that people struggle with a lot. And it's something where you could end up spending loads of time researching what that issue is. But if you just take a bit of time to understand things in really kind of broad brush terms of the financial side of running a business, then you kind of know generally, and you can have the conversations with your accountant and you don't feel you're kind of working in the dark on that side of things. So I think anything that can take time off of people where they're spending it on something that's not adding value and really focus on what's the reason their business was successful and what's going to make their business jump to the next level, as you mentioned, is always going to be a huge benefit, I think.
Because I imagine another way that a VA almost is similar to accountant in what we can offer is you can extend to your client your own personal network. So I'd imagine that if a client comes to you, there's other things like you might not be able to help, but I know someone who's great for this. I know someone who's good for mortgage. I know this, and that's what I find that I do for a lot of my clients. There's quite a lot I've put in touch. They've done blog post swaps together, all sorts. Or some have actually used each other and paid. because it's you buy into someone else's network. And so it's, I think the key thing with a VA is you want one who isn't trying to do everything, but kind of knows what their limits are. So for instance, I will say to clients, I can do website tweaks for you, but I'm not designing a website or building a website. That's not my skills. But because I've built my network up now, I can recommend someone who's a brilliant designer, and I can recommend someone if you just want, you know, a certain style website. So it's kind of that as well.
Yeah, that was the question that I had actually. Like, you obviously specialize in the digital space. It sounds like there will be VAs out there who specialize in every single different type of niche area out there. And
Yeah.
I guess from a practical perspective, how do people find the right VA for them?
I think word of mouth is good. So because I end up doing quite a lot of social media for my clients, they then talk to each other. So other people are like, oh, I also want my social media. So that comes, but just have a look at what's out there. So you will have VAs that are kind of more along the PA line, who are very much about, they will organise your schedule, they'll book your calls, they'll book your appointments when you're allowed to, they'll sort all your travel out. There are some VAs who won't touch social media at all. There are tech VAs, so they very much specialise in systems, and then often the next level up from that is they will move into being an online business manager, which is where they're sort of more heavily involved in your organisation and helping with kind of structures across it and sort of implementing things all the way through. And then also, even just within social media, you will have VAs who specialise in, you know, they'll be like a Pinterest specialist or something, or a LinkedIn specialist. So I would just generally say the best way to get them is just word of mouth. So just look at your local networking groups and just talk to other people you know and see who they recommend.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. And actually, similar concept to what we were saying with an accountant, you know, get people who are recommended, because that's the best the best source, really. And in terms of like how you charge your clients, is it, I assume, is it on an hourly basis, or the packages, or what kind of range of billing arrangements do you have with your clients?
So it's all very much bespoke to each customer. So pretty much all VAs we work mainly off of retainers. So you buy a set number of hours per month, which means you then guaranteed that you've got that work. It's up to between the VA and the client. Sometimes it will be that you've either got a set day each week that the client knows that that's your day on Monday and you can do whatever work, or it might be that they'll give you the work in advance and you've kind of got the month to do it. You've got 5 hours and you fit it in as it suits you. Quite a lot of us also do sort of one-off projects, so you don't have to commit to like a rolling monthly retainer. But I have quite a few businesses that they don't need that commitment, but every now and then something will pop up, like there's a launch or a new product and they just need a bit of support for a few weeks. So I think that's part of the great thing about it. It's that freedom. I think the one thing is just for clients to understand that VAs, because we're freelance, we have other clients. So it's a challenge as a VA to keep those boundaries in and just get clients aware that we have got other work as well. So they do need to give notice. I think you can get into not such a great relationship if they kind of expect everything at the drop of a hat and now, because then you end up with sort of, it's not fair on your other clients. So yeah, I would say that's my one little bit of educating for VAs of just, I guess it requires you to get a little bit more organised in your business, because you just need to think ahead a bit more about what you can delegate and when you want it done.
That was actually going to be my next question, because for people, they'll think, I've got a VA, I've got someone on call to deal with these kind of tasks. But from your perspective, as you say, you've got a number of clients and that client base is building. It must be hard to make it feel like you're still kind of at the beck and call there to support the business, but at the same time, you can't do that for 30 businesses at the same time. So how do you manage that? Do people what kind of notice do people need to give you, for example, to do a task? Or
well, I think majority of my clients, it's fairly agreed that we just know what we're doing each month. Some of them they know if there's the occasional thing that they can drop me a line and I'll do my best to get it done as soon as possible. Ideally, we try and plan it out for the month. It's kind of trust, I think. I think that's a mistake I made and quite a few other VAs make at the beginning. When you don't have so many clients, you do everything immediately. And then as your own business grows, you have to slightly step back and realize it's not sustainable to basically, when someone says jump, you say how high. You have to kind of, redraw those lines a bit. But I think with all my clients now, it's kind of trust that they know that I will get it done. Might take a day or two, but it will happen. So I think it just builds up over time.
Yeah, and just on that, because as you say, literally over the past 12 months, things have expanded really quickly for you. And I guess if you look back a year ago, you were just starting out, you now progress really quickly. Like, what are your, I guess, medium and long-term goals here? What's your reason why, and how are you going to make sure that doesn't get bulldozed by client requests?
I think my reason why is just sharing my success now. So I've, from starting out last year, I've now got 6 associates working for me. So that is other VAs who I then pass on some of my client work to. So they've all got specialities. So for instance, one is brilliant at design. So if we've got workbooks that need making, it goes to her. And again, it's that for me, it's a better use of my time. She can do it more efficiently and to a higher standard. But what I really like is at least 2 of those associates are ladies who were made redundant because of COVID.
Yeah.
So if the fact that I can then help them set up in a freelance career and sort of, basically send income money their way, I guess there's a bit of mentoring going on as well. That's brilliant. So I think for me, it's really, I don't really have a specific goal. It's just keep doing what's doing and keep growing, and I'm making the decisions as I go along. And it's basically, it's all just about sharing the success and building the community.
That sounds like a really positive reason to do it, to be honest. I think as well, just giving people the opportunity to have freedom and be able to work in a less rigid way, because as you say, that sounded like it was one of the main drivers for you to begin with, was to have that freedom to work more on your own terms and being in a position to offer that to other people, where I think in some cases it feels so out of reach for people to be able to do that, that it makes a big it makes a big difference. So I think that's a real positive reason. Sorry, go on.
Sorry, I was just thinking, one of the really interesting things I've particularly seen over the last year is that you'll have a lot of people who have set up a VA business while they're still in their 9 to 5. And so what it is it's something they can learn around the job, and they can slowly take on a client or 2 in their own time. And a lot of ladies in particular are using it to kind of slowly build that up. And then that allows them to leave that 9 to 5 without there being that sudden gap. So that seems to be happening more and more. And I just think it appeals so much to women because it's just so flexible around school hours. It's just a dream. So when I was in retail, obviously, we had to work weekends. I was working most of the holidays. It was incredibly complex negotiations with the staff rota to get time off with my kids. You wouldn't be able to do that thing of, sports days up if I hadn't, planned it basically a year in advance. It wouldn't happen. And it was a constant source of stress. And, and then I'd be using a childminder, and then the childminder would leave. And I just, looking back, the fact that that's all gone now, and it's just like, if they need an hour, I can do it. I don't know how I would have homeschooled if I'd still, well, I suppose in retail I wouldn't have been working. But so I think that is why it's so appealing to so many people, and more people are joining the business. It allows you to have that freedom for your family and the lifestyle that you want.
That sounds really positive, Jenny. So in terms of using, so you say that you've got 6 associates that work with you. How does that work? Are they almost VAs for you, or are they employed by you? How have you set that up?
So they're all freelance as well. So I don't employ them. They all have a variety of hours. So some just do 2 or 3 hours a week. Some are looking for more. So some are actually doing very specifically VA work for me, because I've got to the same stage where it's like, for instance, I'm not managing to keep my LinkedIn profile up to date. So one of my VAs, she does my LinkedIn, but she's also the business LinkedIn specialist. So we've put time into her really learning it. So I have a range of clients where I do quite a few jobs for them, but one of them is LinkedIn. So that associate now, basically, she is the LinkedIn person. She does all jobs that are to do with LinkedIn. But yeah, that's quite common. What normally happens with a VA is obviously you have a set number of working hours a week, and then you reach that limit. And so you kind of get to a ceiling in your business. So you have to decide what you want to do. You can push your prices up a bit, but there's a limit to what you can do. You can specialize, obviously become more of a tech VA or an OBM, and then you can push your prices up. Or the other way to do it is what I've done, in order not to have to say no to work, you then take on other people. And I found actually some VAs are quite happy to do associates, because if you're not as confident at marketing yourself or finding clients, it's actually quite a nice arrangement. So they've got kind of the support of me, and they know if they get stuck, they've got someone they can ask questions, and I'll bring the clients in because that just seems to be something I'm good at, and I give it to them. So obviously they work for a slightly lesser rate than what I charge the client because I'm covering other costs. But it's a setup that seems to work really well and suits everyone.
It sounds like you're an incredibly efficient machine there, Jenny. It's fantastic to hear. I guess a couple of questions on the financial side of running your business. So obviously you've been established for just over a year or so now. And how have you found running the financial side of your business, and what kind of financial, I guess, awareness and background and skill set that you have before?
So I've actually gone on a massive journey of money learning because I came out of retail. So I had 18 years of basically being paid less than £10 an hour, and was so kind of conditioned that I got like a raise that was less than £10. I was like, oh, I got a raise. So there's been like a massive learning. So when I started out, I didn't do enough research and I had a lot of issues. So I just did not charge enough. So I've had to go on a incredibly quick course of learning to value myself, value my skills, value what I do, and get the pricing right. So that was a huge journey. I think the retail, I think initially when I set up as a VA, I kind of divorced it a bit. I was like drawing a line and didn't see how those skills are relevant, but actually they are, because I think I've got the retail. I've always been quite good at knowing what sells. So I can both use that for client, but also my business. It's just looking at your business and going, well, this is what people want, so I'll market more of it, and just working out very quickly, you know, am I making a profit of that or am I making a loss? So I think actually those skills are good. I'm also quite lucky in that my husband is an accountant, but he manages a small firm of accountants. So yes, he helped me set up on Xero, and he actually quite likes it when I try and do new things because he can sort of play around and go, oh, we could do this, and I've been meaning to try this. So yeah, I feel like I slightly cheat because I know it's something that comes up obviously every tax year, and I'm in networking groups of other small business owners, and you can kind of feel the stress, and I'm just like, just get my husband to look. So yeah, that would be my top tip: of be married to an accountant and let them deal with it all for you.
You don't want to marry an accountant, yeah.
No. So boring.
No, that sounds like really handy then. And so I guess, because what I was thinking about the initial setup, you know, the legal form, are you a company, sole trader, that kind of thing. But did you effectively have a business meeting with your husband then, and you ran through all of the pros and cons and landed on an answer? Or have you involved an external accountant at all?
Well, I'm kind of surrounded by accountants because my dad's also an accountant. So he sent me a long list of what to do. So yeah, I'm a sole trader at the moment. So kind of the husband knows that we've got like a financial plan, and I know he'll sort of step in, and when it's time to sort of change the legal entity of the company. One thing that's amazing about the VA community is that it's very supportive. So if you basically get on Facebook or Instagram, you can easily connect with other VAs who will give you the guidance and help you understand what you need to set up. So obviously as a VA, one of the things we need to do is get an insurance, but people will advise you how to do that. You need to get contracts in place, but they will advise you where you can source those contracts. I think that's one of the great things about the community, that you don't feel that you're alone in having to figure out the more technical stuff.
I think certainly something that we've been thinking about, Harry and I, you know, building a community, a small business community on which you can reach out for any kind of problem that you have, rather than just thinking, oh, what on earth do I do here? And then, you know, you can learn from other people's mistakes, which I guess is always a better way of doing things. That's
definitely one of my missions to my clients. I'm always saying to them, I made this mistake and I've done it, so you don't have to. So this is what I can teach you. Yeah.
No,
I think that's kind of one of the points of this podcast, isn't it, Lee? It's so to allow people to share the tips that they've had, because there's each podcast we've done, even so far, the journeys have been very different in how people have grown the business to where they are today, and everyone's tips and tricks are kind of very different, and the mistakes they made are different. And the hope is, the more stories you tell, one, you're giving people hope that you can make this a success, and there's a lot of different ways of doing that. No way is the same. But also, here's some kind of pitfalls that people have been falling into, and this is ways to avoid them. So I think that's really important, and being able to create a community as well for small businesses, I think, is massive, because I think certainly for us anyway, being accountants who kind of mainly people just have a 9-to-5 job, the thought of starting their own business is crazy, and And therefore, if you're in that world and you want to start your own business, you've probably not got an existing network of people who understand what you're going through and can offer advice. So you might feel relatively isolated, and you're the first person who's hitting these obstacles. But in reality, you're probably coming up against the same stuff that people are always coming up against if they've had a business before. So having access to a group of people who understand that and have been through it themselves, I think is massive, and I can see how that would be a benefit for VAs as well, for sure.
Yeah, totally. And I would say, I think obviously that's been kind of even more this year, because you can't go to like a traditional networking or anything. But I would say just get online, get onto the medium that suits you, whether that's Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook and Instagram, and just have a hunt around. And I found in my experience, generally everyone's supportive and everyone wants to help each other, and people are so giving of their time. So I would say just do that, just get online and make connections.
Yeah, and just on that, Jenny, so just, I guess, is there anything else that you've, a big learning curve that you've had, any kind of war stories over the past 12 months that you thought you don't want other people to make this mistake? Have you had any of those kind of situations arise that you'd like to share with the people?
Yeah, I think the two big ones that I've probably slightly touched on already were I didn't probably do quite enough research at the beginning, because I was asked to work for people before I'd said I'm going to offer to work for people. So I plucked prices out of the air before doing research. So I'd say do some research. And the other big one is, in that first meeting, you don't need to give a price. It's fine to go away and wait, because that's the mistake I made. And then once you've made that little bed to lie in, it's taken a year to finally get that client up to a sensible price. So that's one you regret. And I think the other one as well is probably just being kind to yourself as a boss, and just that you can have boundaries. Because I think I probably went a bit too far in trying to do everything for everyone, and kind of forgot that the reason I was doing it was that I could have some time off. So there was no point in sort of setting up a business and I was then working all hours. So I sent a email to clients saying I was having 2 days off, that I would just like, I have to tell them I'm having 2 days off. And when it's become this massive thing in your head, and of course I send it out and either it gets ignored, or they're all like, oh, that's great, well done you. And you're like, okay, this was not this big deal in my head that it was. Because I think that's the other thing that can happen with VAs, because we take on all those little jobs for our clients, we then become very overwhelmed ourselves sometimes. So it's just remembering to give yourself a break. I'd say the thing that has helped me most this year is confidence. So part of the reason why it came to an end of my book selling career was I had an accident at work. So I had a load of boxes full of my head. I had something called post-concussion syndrome, and there was a brief period where I was struggling to walk and talk, and I've sort of had ongoing issues since then. So I'd spent probably the most of my life up to about 35 being a very cautious person. When you kind of overthink things to the stage, if you don't actually do anything, you kind of paralyze yourself. And I was very like, you keep your head down, you do your job, everything will be all right. And then it wasn't all right. Even though I'd done my best and done my job, things went quite wrong. And basically, I guess it was like Ross and Friends. I had a newfound respect for life. And I think that's been the change, in that it was kind of like I've played by the rules and it's not worked. So I kind of had a complete attitude change of just jumping into everything, having the confidence, giving it a go. And that has what's made all the difference this year. So I just haven't said no to much. You just give it a go, and then you learn as you go along. And it's worked so well. And I think that's why it's been so successful. So that would be my big tip. It was also interesting because my husband had done a similar job before he career changed to manage an accountant. So that was, for both of us, our first real encounter with the sort of the self-employed business community. And he was like, with the clients, he's like the successful ones that he could see. It was confidence. All the ones who were successful, even if a business didn't work out, they were fine, picked themselves up, did the next thing. And so I think we both really learned from that in order to kind of really grow and get beyond where we were, it was just having a go and being confident about it.
I think what you touched on there is one of the main differences between the people who are successful and the people aren't. It's that willingness to just have a go, not kind of, me and Lee have talked about a lot of times in terms of analysis paralysis, haven't we, Lee? Yeah. Of just looking at the detail that much and researching to the point where you're that tangled up in the weeds of detail, you don't end up doing anything, or you're worried about even the smallest of things. And that smallest of worry can stop you doing what you really should be doing and what would really make you happy. So I think the confidence just to have a stab and go for it. I mean, setting up the podcast, I think for me and Leo, when we started recording the videos to begin with, was massive for us, because it's not something either of us had ever done before. As two accountants who used to being sat behind a desk crunching numbers, it was massively stepping outside of our comfort zone, and the willingness to step outside of your comfort zone and think this is either going to be successful, or if it doesn't, then the worst case scenario, I've learned some lessons that I can take on, and it will kind of improve me or grow me in a different way than maybe I didn't anticipate. I think the confidence just to have a stab is absolutely massive, and it's the difference between being stuck in a rut and actually doing something actively for yourself. So I think that's big, and I think that's probably a good place to end the main portion of the podcast. So massively appreciate your time, Jenny. It's been really nice to get to know you and understand more about your business and give us an insight into VAs. That's been great. The point we usually end on is, as a couple of kind of bookworms, I think we could be accused of being, couldn't we, Lee? Is just to look to you and see, have you got any book recommendations of anything that you think's really made a difference in your life, either in business or even more just broadly?
Yeah, no, I feel the bookworm thing. That's how I found you on Instagram. I think you were recommending books. So I was like, yes, more books to read. Yes, obviously so many books. So you know what it's like. It's a bit like choosing your baby, which one you like best. For me, though, I think the most complete book I've read is The Success Principles by Jack Canfield. It's the one that covers everything. So it covers kind of mindset, it covers how to be productive, it covers building a team, it covers communication. It also has a little bit about money as well, so not kind of detail, but just sort of thinking about it. So I think I would say, I mean, it's a huge book and it is small print, but it's absolutely brilliant. I've reread it, and the coach recommended it to me. I know she rereads it regularly. So I'd say you could probably find a lot of other books that go into detail about specific areas and possibly more detail. But if you want like a broad brush, if you read just one book, that's the one to go for.
I've not actually read that one, so
neither, yeah.
I'll definitely add that to the list, and we'll read that next. I'll let you know what I think, but it sounds like a really positive one. I think sometimes having one book that does everything is massively helpful, isn't it? And then if there's a certain area you need to know more, you can buy a book on that. So I think that's a good tip, and I think your tips as well for growing a business yourself has been really helpful to hopefully our listeners, if there are any, and to us as well. So massively appreciate your time, Jenny, and who knows, maybe we'll have you back on again in a year or two's time, and we'll have a catch up on where you're up to.
Well, I just want to say thank you so much to both of you, and I think it's amazing what you're doing, and it's really needed, and well done you. Look at you doing a podcast. It's fantastic.
Thanks a lot, Jenny. Appreciate that. Jenny. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot,
Take
Jenny.
Care.